Sandro Botticelli Saint Sebastian was painted in 1474. A Roman soldier turned Christian martyr, Saint Sebastian was one of the most popular figures in 15th century Italian art. Although he survived this ordeal of being shot with arrows and was later martyred by being clubbed to death at the orders of the Emperor Diocletian, Sebastian was often depicted tied to a tree and pierced with arrows. We can better examine Botticelli's Saint Sebastian by comparing it with the treatment of the same subject by two brothers, Antonio and Piero del Pollaiuolo. These Florentine artists were contemporaries of Botticelli. Botticelli's Saint Sebastian introduces us to his approach to depicting the semi-nude human figure as a spiritual vessel. Botticelli achieves this by a means of an aesthetic that evidences a unique fusion of classically influenced form and devotional function. The Pollaiuolo brothers painted this Saint Sebastian between 1473 and 1475. Although scholars debate the specific contribution of each brother to this painting, there is a general agreement that both Antonio and Piero participated in it. Botticelli probably saw the Saint Sebastian either in process or finished. While these two works depict the same subject, the two paintings visualize different theological content. This comparison demonstrates that content is not only what is depicted, but also how it is depicted. Comparing these paintings, two key differences stand out. First, their treatment of anatomy, and second, the contextualization of the subjects. This martyrdom of Saint Sebastian also showcases the brothers' skills in depicting the human body in various poses. The tense muscles of the figures evidence what Renaissance artists had learned about anatomy by dissecting cadavers. Despite the anatomical exactitude of the archers, they seem a bit like sculptures posed in a formation around the saint. The monumentality of the archers is accentuated by the fact that the figures' movements mirror each other. Their formation, for one instant, creates a triangular composition. The visual language of Botticelli's Saint Sebastian suggests that the observation of nature should be improved upon by the application of more beautiful proportions and poses. Despite being pierced by 6 arrows, Sebastian appears unharmed. The saint's immaculate body seems inconsistent with the horror of his martyrdom. Perhaps this is the artist's way of depicting the saint's miraculous defiance of death. Botticelli's painting is not only a depiction of Sebastian's physical likeness, but also his spiritual being. If Antonio and Piero de Pollaiuolo depicted the body as a study of human anatomy, Botticelli's figures originated from within his imagination as he contemplated the spirit of his subject. Compared to Botticelli's figures, these archers lack inner life. They are machines with a mission. Since these archers are acting as executioners, carrying out orders, their lack of personalities is less pronounced. Compared to the archers by Antonio and Piero de Pollaiuolo, Botticelli's Saint Sebastian manifests a state of sacred being. Our contrast of these two paintings is not limited to their treatment of anatomy. They also differ in how the subject is contextualized or decontextualized. Behind the figures, Antonio and Piero de Pollaiuolo painted an atmospheric landscape full of localizing details that seems to extend endlessly. Elevated above his executioners, Saint Sebastian is situated between earth and heaven. He twists in physical suffering while turning his head and eyes up to heaven for spiritual deliverance. While Antonio and Piero de Pollaiuolo emphasize the saint's physical suffering, Botticelli draws the viewer into the saint's spiritual state. Botticelli moves the saint closer to the picture plane, making him more directly accessible to the viewer. Botticelli's Saint Sebastian stands against the sky, perhaps suggesting the saint's triumph over death. Botticelli's treatment of Sebastian emphasizes the saint as a metaphor for Christ's resurrection. Botticelli's Saint Sebastian decontextualizes the figure from the landscape and the narrative. If the painting of Saint Sebastian by Antonio and Piero da Pollaiuolo captures a moment frozen in time, Botticelli's painting evokes a moment suspended outside of time. Avoiding the narrative drama, Botticelli depicts Sebastian after the archers have done their cruel work and departed. The pictorial smallness of the soldiers in comparison to Sebastian pushes him even closer to the viewer. Botticelli, like Antonio and Piero da Pollaiuolo, belonged to a generation of Florentine artists who inherited the theory of perspective as a method of depicting pictorial narrative space. However, Botticelli's Saint Sebastian demonstrates how he strategically resisted this evolution towards greater narrative action and naturalistic space. Perspective, as a method of depicting ever-expanding distances of pictorial space, was advanced in the first half of the 15th century by artists such as Masaccio and Piero della Francesca. For example, Piero della Francesca's The Flagellation of Christ is celebrated for its use of perspective in organizing pictorial space. However, one of the consequences of this expansion of pictorial space is the visual distancing of the sacred subject from the viewer. Piero's Christ is so far removed from the viewer that the potential of this work to prompt the viewer spiritually is diminished. Likewise, Antonio and Piero da Pollaiuolo require the viewer to pass through a circle of archers in order to reach the saint. Botticelli's art evidences a potential critique of ever-expanding pictorial space as the context for sacred subjects. Botticelli emphasized the function of devotional art as an expression of spiritual intimacy. To that end, he enhanced the visual proximity of the sacred subject to the picture plane and to the viewer. Compared to the painting by Antonio and Piero da Pollaiuolo, Botticelli's Saint Sebastian is more distinctly a devotional panel. This contrast between the narrative quality of one painting of Saint Sebastian and the non-narrative character of the other painting is a distinction with great significance. These two paintings exemplify two divergent currents within the history of Christianity and the visual arts. One current emphasizes the situating of sacred subjects and figures within specific historical contexts, often the context of the original audience. The other current situates sacred subjects and figures in a timeless realm designed to facilitate and elevate the viewer's spiritual devotion. Botticelli's work, for the most part, belongs to this second current. In fact, Botticelli was arguably the preeminent example of this non-narrative or devotional type painting in late 15th century Florence. By contrast, Antonio and Piero del Pollaiuolo represent an approach to the body that emphasizes its potential for monumental form and heroic action. Botticelli contributes to an aesthetic use of the human figure as a means of visualizing morality. His artistic strategy is rooted in a conception of the human body as a vessel for the soul. Although Botticelli employs the classicized form of the nude, his painting visualizes the figure's inner spiritual life. Sandro Botticelli was one of the most skillful and innovative painters of devotional subjects in late 15th century Florence. His Saint Sebastian evidences his commitment to art's function in the service of the sacred.